Well, good morning, everybody. We're back here with Nic De Castro from LandTrust. I guess so I don't screw anything up. Nick, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we can talk about LandTrust.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate you having me on, Brian. Yep, I'm Nick. I'm the founder and CEO of LandTrust. Just for your listeners out there, we are not a conservation easement organization. I know the name could be a little bit confusing at first. We are a for-profit company that helps connect private lands, primarily farmers and ranchers, with recreation income for people coming out and enjoying their land for a day, a week, or longer. So we're based up here in Bozeman, Montana, but we have about 1.25 million acres on the platform today of, again, primarily multi-generation farm and ranch families in 30 plus states. I started the company because I wanted to use it from the demand side. I was a hunter and fisherman who said, hey, there's some beautiful land. I would love to have access to it, and I'd be happy to pay for the opportunity. So that's how it all started. But that's a little bit about me. Before I started the company, I did spend about a decade in enterprise software sales. I worked in the marketing and advertising technology space, and lived all over the country in Boston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, LA, Boulder, and then finally came up here to Bozeman at the end of 2016.
Okay. What kind of prompted the move to Bozeman?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I grew up, to some people's chagrin, in Southern California. It was a beautiful place to grow up. It was probably 20 million people ago when I left. But yeah, I grew up hunting, fishing, and surfing and spearfishing and all that fun stuff. And I know people think hunting in Southern California. It used to exist. There was a lot of deserts with a lot of quail and chukar, and I did a lot of upland hunting. So this is all the preface to say, right before Bozeman, I lived in Boulder working on a startup for one of my now board members, and I really liked the mountains, but Boulder was just not, I don't know, wasn't for me. Good technology scene there, but just a lot of people, and even that was like 2014, 2015, something like that. You could tell it was just going to be a suburb of Denver. And I'd been to Montana a handful of times growing up with my family, fly fishing and whatnot. And I said, well, if I needed some technology, because that's the space I work in, but I want to live in a place that has abundant recreation, Bozeman seemed to kind of be the center of that Venn diagram.
Okay. I mean, I can believe that. So, had you spent any time in Bozeman in the winter before you moved there?
No, I had not. I had the few fly fishing trips we'd taken up here were obviously during the summertime. I think the first day I moved up here was like the 15th of December of 2016. And it was 20 to 30 below zero, but perfectly clear skies, no wind, you know. So I had not been here in the winter, but I lived in Boston and New York and Chicago, some cold places.
Well, I'm kind of curious now. What's the winter like, compared to an East Coast city that's, similar latitude?
Um, Boston's cold because it's on the water. So, I've been colder in Boston and in San Francisco than I have been in Bozeman, because it's so dry here. The dampness. I mean, shoot, I was down on doing a couple turkey hunts in Missouri 3 weeks ago on a couple of our farms, and 40 degrees and rainy and windy down there because it's so damp. I was cold. I shovel the snow at 5 degrees up here where there's no wind. I don't know, it's just so dry.
I think a lot of it is the wind. It's the wind for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could tolerate a lot outside if it's sunny and no wind. Like 20 degrees,
Agree.
I might be outside in a t-shirt if there's no wind.
That's right.
As soon as that wind starts blowing and it's a little bit damp, you better be piling on the layers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My wife is from Dodge City, Kansas, and my brother-in-law still lives down there. And I love that part of the country, except that it's 20 miles per hour sustained wind. And it's 5 days a year.
Dodge City's an hour and a half away from my place.
So
I'm aware.
Yeah. I love it down there, but that wind gets me.
I think, they call Chicago the windy city, but I think I saw that Dodge City is the windiest city in
It is.
America.
Yep. Fun fact that my brother-in-law told me.
Yeah, and it's just over an hour away from here. I mean, they did kind of name the whole state after an Indian word, a Native American word for wind, people of the wind, Kansas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Kansas. That's the Kansas tribe was people of the wind.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, I learned something new here. I'm gonna have to talk to my in-laws. They should have taught me that before.
And I'm gonna have to reclassify this thing as educational now. All right. So tell me about land trust. What is land trust if it's not a conservation easement type operation? What do you guys do?
Sure. So land trust is a marketplace. So um, we consider it what we call a land sharing marketplace. A lot of folks have probably heard of, home sharing like Airbnb or VRBO. There's big car sharing marketplaces like Turo. And essentially these sharing economy marketplaces, you own an asset that you don't utilize all the time. And so there are other people out there that want to be able to utilize it in small increments. So with land trust, we're about land, hence land is in our name and trust is in our name, not because we're some sort of real estate investment trust or something like that, but because our marketplace only can function if there is a high degree of trust between landowners and us, land trust, the company, but also landowners and the guests who come out through land trust. Um, so, yeah, we work with a lot of farmers, ranchers, and other private landowners who own this incredible asset that sits underneath their feet every day. And there are lots of different types of folks out there who would love to have access to that land to do things they love: hunt, fish, birdwatch, camp, RV, whatever. And so we are basically facilitating a marketplace for the people who love to go outdoors and would love to have access to some beautiful ground for themselves for a few days, and the people who own that ground and need to generate additional symbiotic income with their day-to-day, production agriculture lifestyle.
Good stuff. And we talk a lot on this podcast about the businesses of agriculture. And we talk about that.
That's Damian Mason's podcast. That's the name of his podcast. That's why you had him on.
Yeah, I did. And I was just thinking, man, it'd be cool if I had a little button here to hit for someone else, because I have the one for ranching for profit. I'm sure.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Where was I? Yeah.
You're talking about the business of ag. Yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of times, we have a land business and we have our production business, or we have, our crop business and our livestock business. And we don't necessarily see the land business as something always that's separate, or, there's a lot of operations that the land business is not necessarily separate. And one thing that's, really coming to be an issue lately with, higher cost of living, higher, inflation going high, all our input costs going high, is, we're seeing the reduced profitability in our livestock enterprises and our cropping enterprises. So this is a great way to concessionize some of the other things that you may or may not, that you may have on your property that you might not even think about. So let's talk about some of the things. I guess, can you tell us some of the things besides just the obvious one of hunting?
Sure.
What are some of the things that, like some of the services that you can book through Land Trust besides hunting?
Sure. So I think you mentioned the land business, and I do want to touch on that real quick. We're really fortunate to have been able to work with a guy named John Hanson. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he was, I think, number 2 for Ted Turner for 20 something years. Helped him set up all of this Nebraska stuff. He's a Montana native. Obviously a wealth of knowledge, getting to run operations like that. But that was one of the things that Ted always had kind of a mandate on, which was ecology and economy. Yes, the guy's worth billions of dollars, but he wasn't going to, burn all of his money on land. They needed to produce, they need to be profitable in cash flow. And so John really brought that whole, you're not in the cattle business, you're not in the grains business, you're in the land business. And those are line items, but so is recreation, so it can be ecosystem services, et cetera, et cetera. So he really, shared a lot of that knowledge with us, which we now kind of institutionalize and push out to our landowners. But yeah, so from a recreation business, of course, hunting is where we've focused a lot of our time on since we started the business. But I always knew we weren't a hunting company. We're an outdoors company and a private lands company. And so we have people booking fishing. We have people booking foraging, shed hunting. We're about to launch a big pilot with Keystone RV. So one of the largest RV manufacturers in the country, because, if you've been paying attention to that market since COVID, it exploded, people buying RVs.
Oh yeah.
and there's nowhere to take them. So, I mean, if you haven't booked something in Montana, like a campground or a state park or whatever, it's not going to happen like a year out, 2 years out. And so we look at it and say, hey, we have all these incredible landowners and incredible properties. Would you rather go to a KOA or would you rather go to a ranch here in Montana that's, a few thousand acres, have it to yourself, fish, see the beautiful place, meet the family, maybe buy some of their beef that from the ranch you're staying on. So we think we have a really interesting offering to a lot of different verticals of people who love the outdoors and want to be outside. So of course, hunting is that predominant one today, but we're developing these other ones as we speak.
Awesome. So you said you're on Turner's Nebraska ranches, maybe some of his Montana ranches, if I heard that right. They've got one just a few miles south of me, like 10 miles south of me, kind of down on the Oklahoma line. They call it the Z Bar, the managers down there. Um, I won't name them by name on the podcast,
Sure.
but they are good friends. I've worked with them for a lot of years. We work together doing fire stuff, doing grazing stuff, and they're my neighbors. They're just generally good people. And you're absolutely right about Ted Turner and how he feels about the ecology of his ranches. He does some of the stuff that they do down there. I really makes me raise an eyebrow, like prairie dogs. Prairie dogs, okay, they belong here. I get that.
Yeah.
They kind of reduce productivity in area. How much do they really take off the overall value of a ranch? Okay, if I had a couple
Right.
of prairie dog towns, it'd be 2-3 acres.
Sure.
It really wouldn't hurt a whole lot. I don't have them right now, but I'm not going to go try to reestablish prairie dogs. Okay.
I don't know a lot of ranchers that would.
Well, they do like that. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that the Turner folks do is they try to go out and they try to reestablish prairie dog towns where they think they ought to be. Okay, fine. If you own that much money, you have that much land and you have that much money, you can do whatever you want to. But I think what the cool thing is that they're doing, it's not just to bring back prairie dogs because nobody cares about prairie dogs. It's a stupid little rodent, right?
Yeah.
But I think what they're really their overall goal for that is to bring back that tongue twisters this morning is to bring back the
There it is.
black-footed ferret. You knew
Ferrets.
the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, the black-footed ferret, which got super, super endangered. And one of their primary food sources for that ferret is prairie dogs.
Prairie dogs.
So I think that's their overall goal is to not just try to bring back some of these species, but to improve the habitat for species to reattract keystone biological indicators.
Right.
And I can even, so for me, what does that look like on my land where I've got it? I feel that's like, I don't have a lot of the bottom ground. I don't really have, my stuff's kind of like mostly on a ridge top and steep hillsides.
Right.
So I'm thinking about more about lesser prairie chicken.
Yep.
Dad did a lot of work on this ranch, 15, 20 years ago to restore for prairie chicken. I try to keep it in good shape for prairie chickens. That's why, until about the 1st of June, I don't go out till 9 o'clock. And if I do have to go out before 9 o'clock, there's areas that I avoid because those are prairie chicken priority areas. Okay. So I start a little bit later, miss a couple hours of the nice weather of the day. But those birds are important. We've eliminated and destroyed so much of the habitat for that bird that we've got to protect what's left.
Agreed. Yeah.
So it's not just the prairie chicken for me. It was, I think it was like 2014 or 2015. We were cruising around down there and we kicked up a pair of fox. Yeah. Now fox here in Southwest Kansas are fairly uncommon.
Rarity. Yeah.
Like I could probably count on both hands the amount of foxes I've seen around here in my entire life and still have years left over. Like,
yeah.
And I'm just thinking it's probably 5 or 7 times I've seen a fox out here.
Wow.
I've seen 3 mountain lions. So that kind of gives how
for sure.
how elusive they are. Well, when we were out in that pasture and we saw the 2, it was really strange Well, we, you know, we did some research and we talked about it later and we figured out we figured that that was probably a breeding pair
Mm,
of either swift or kit fox, which I don't know, you can't really tell the difference between a swift fox and a kit fox until you get your hands on one.
right.
It's like the swift fox is in the west and the kit fox is in the east, and they just
Yeah.
overlap in this narrow little strip right here. There might not even be a difference. Anyway, so after we identified what they were, we had to do a little bit of research and we're like, oh, one of their favorite foods is prairie chickens and prairie chicken eggs.
Oh. Mm,
So even though that may be like a short-term negative thing on a population, I think it's like an overall indicator of good health and good
definitely.
system function that we're supporting, not just on my ranch, but in that general overall area, that we're supporting a population of birds healthy enough
Healthy enough to have predators. Yeah.
to have predators of those birds.
Mhm.
I think that was kind of something. Haven't really seen a whole lot of prairie chickens since, but we've had a couple fires and been in drought for
Sure.
years, and that definitely
Yeah.
helps.
The drought's been horrendous down there.
So income streams. You talk fishing, shed hunting, other types of hunting. Um, what about some non-conventional stuff?
Yeah. So we categorize this as farm and ranch activities. So it's a very broad category intentionally, but my gut says that this will probably be one of the biggest categories that LandTrust facilitates in the future. And we already have some folks who are listing stuff like this where it's a regenerative ranch tour. Um, I don't know if you know the Ingerlands up here in Big Timber, Montana, but a
Roger.
really cool. Mhm.
We've met.
Yep. So they're offering, tours of their ranch where they take producers and shoot. They just had a bunch of investment makers come out there and book something to see how they run an operation. I look at it as whatever your imagination could be. Let's say you're a rice farmer in Louisiana. Well, of course, you're going to have hunting value there for recreation from waterfowl. You're going to have bird watching value there as well. A lot of rice farmers down there are also now putting crawfish on their rice too. And so, that production could also lead to what we call a farm experience where maybe it's a you pick, you have folks come out there and do their own crawfish and then you do a boil after. Like that could be an experience. It's almost pure profit. It's a super fun time. Like I would book that. I don't know about you. I love crawfish, and that would be the type of experience I'd want to do. Obviously, cattle brandings or calving or a lot of these things that you and your audience do every day that are just chores are really interesting to people who didn't grow up doing that stuff. And so my perspective is this is one of those things that has so much potential. We're still learning about a lot of it. So I don't want to pretend that we have it figured out. We don't have it figured out, but we are working on it. And we're working on it with our landowners. And how do you quote productize this into offerings that are easy for our landowners to offer, profitable for them to offer, and also I think really kind of reconnects the non-producing 99% of us in the country with the people who are growing our food, fuel, and fiber. And at a high level for LandTrust, that's what we really want to drive. We want to drive that reconnection to agriculture. And so what better way than to do it through the actual people who are on the ground and run the operations, So to me, I think that farm and ranch experience, whether it's, hey, this is how we do this is how we run our regenerative agriculture operation. We have Katie down there at KCK Farm. She has, regenerative chicken farm tours where she'll cook you dinner too. And it could be anything. It could be like, baby, after calving, I have 3 little daughters, almost 4, 2, and 6 months. But one of the ranches here, I got to take my oldest a year ago just to go see the calves. And Caitlin here, who's the rancher, showed her the calves and talked to her about them. And it was a fantastic time. And my wife posted it on Instagram and she had like 10 people direct message her, 10 moms being like, where did you do that? So there's a lot of desire for these things. We are going to figure it out. It's our job. Like we're business partners with our landowners. We make no money as you know, you're a landowner of ours. We didn't charge you anything. We didn't ask you for money up front. We only make money when our landowners make money. So it's our job to go out, find these market opportunities, develop them, and bring them to our landowners and say, hey, you can do this if you'd like to.
Okay. That's a good segue. Why don't you tell us how that relationship between land trust and a landowner, why don't you tell us about how that relationship works and
Sure.
business works?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are business partners with landowners. We're probably one of the few people who ever walked down the proverbial farm gate that's not asking you for money or control of your land in some way, shape, or form. So we bring money, we bring a revenue opportunity, and we keep you 100% in control. And so, uh, let's take hunting is a very well-defined, well-understood thing for your audience. So prior to land trust, there's a few options you have. One is no hunting. It's your property. You don't want it. That's great. Two is, all right, we'll allow some access. There's government programs that you can work with that basically allow you get paid. Every state's a little different, but in Montana, it's called block management, where it's essentially the state is paying you per hunter day to allow open public access to your land for hunting. Okay.
Right.
That's an opportunity. I think you guys have WEHA, right?
Yeah, we have walk-in hunting, which I know nothing about other than I don't
Yep.
participate.
Yep. So, hey, it is an option for landowners out there. It is an option for them to generate some revenue, but the problem is they lose control. So it's the public. So basically it's treated as essentially like public land. There are some tiny different nuances there. And then there, prior to us, and still there are traditional hunting leases. So, a year, multi-year lease where someone says, hey, you have really great ground. I would like to pay you money to own the hunting rights to your property. And so again, the benefit is, you might make a nice chunk of change up front and deal with one person. Those are positives. But on the other side, you just kind of sold the property right. And what I've learned through this business, I didn't come from an agricultural, producing family, is that producers, especially owner operators, value control more than almost anything else. They want to control their operation, their land, their property rights, their business, all that stuff, which I understand completely. And so the idea of selling that right away for a period of time where now your friends, family, neighbors, business can't use that resource has led to some people saying, yeah, I'm not as interested in that anymore. And now there's us. So I, set this up to kind of explain our business model. Land trust, there's no selling of a property right. There's no, we don't do anything where we give you money and then we go sublease it out. You are directly participating as a landowner in our marketplace. You choose what you want to offer, when, for how much, what rules are stipulated with it. And you, at the end of the day, say yes or no to anybody that comes inbound to you. So you have 100% control, and it can be for as little as a day, or it could be for a full season. So again, it's all about you retaining your control of your property, right, for that recreation opportunity. And a lot of our landowners really like it because a lot of our landowners have that they themselves or their friends or their family or their neighbors or their business partners do like to hunt or fish or do some of these things. And they'd like to be able to offer that to them, but they still want to generate some income too. And so as opposed to these other options, now with land trust, those landowners can participate with us and list their property with us in our marketplace, and they can black out dates. And they say, hey, you know what? That week around Thanksgiving, we have family coming in. That's, they want to come out here, but we can monetize other times of the year. Or we really like to hunt deer here, but we don't care about turkeys. We don't hunt upland birds. We can offer that stuff. Or we like the hunting, but we have fishing. We have, cool pad for RVs, and we can do that. So it really is whatever you want it to be. It could be one day a year or all year for everything or for one little thing.
I think a couple of the ones that I have on there just off the top of my head is I have a beaver viewing tour.
Love it.
I would take people down and show them my beaver ponds and talk about beavers and what they do. The other one I think we have that I haven't seen a whole lot of is a stargazing experience. Because, I've been here on the ranch most of my life. I spent
Sure.
9 years in Virginia Beach area. Yeah. I lived a summer in Chicago, like north end suburbs of Chicago. Not an experience I really wish to replicate a lot. Um, but we take it for granted of how clear the skies are out here in Western Kansas. Like
That's right.
for stargazing, it doesn't get a whole lot better than Barber County. I'm
Yeah.
over.
We have some places in eastern Montana that might compete with you a little bit, but yeah, it's very rare.
Yeah, I could believe Eastern Montana has some places. I was just thinking, like Oklahoma City, it's way too far. Can't see the lights of it.
Yep.
Um, there's just a little bit of pollution on the horizon. That's about it. And of course, wind farms, which are just that sea of blinking red on the horizon.
Yep.
Um, but the stargazing, if you want to come out and stargaze, I've got a couple great ridges that you have a 180-degree view of the whole sky.
Awesome. Yeah. And you know, again, as a business partner, here's the partnership. You own the asset, your land. Um, and so that's what you bring to the table, which is the biggest piece. We are nothing without our landowners, of course. Our part of the partnership is building the technology and the platform, and then marketing to the demand and facilitating a great experience, a great, safe, insured experience. And as I mentioned, obviously you've gotten almost predominantly, I think you just got a couple camping inquiries, but you've got predominantly since, by the way, you're 2 days away from your 1-year anniversary with LandTrust. So congrats.
Hey,
But predominantly you've seen a bunch of hunting inquiries because that's where we've been spending marketing dollars. But it is our job, because we're aligned, we sit on the same side of the table, for us to go find these stargazing, camping, farm and ranch experiences, and start developing and marketing to those types of customers. And that's what we're starting to undertake now. You'll start to see more of these different types of activities being marketed to you, and now seeing the demand for that come to you.
but you mentioned something about, well, I'll throw it out there about liability.
Yep.
Ability, I believe you said insurance. So why don't you tell us how land trust helps that issue for the landowners?
Sure. So liability since day one has always been the biggest question, and it makes total sense. This is, again, most of our landowners are owner operators. And so this was not only inviting you out to their most prized asset, but it's also their home. So, this is an important thing. And I started with hunting. So you're inviting essentially strangers onto your property with deadly weapons. Not an insurer's, dream, but, so that's really where we started, was how do we make this, a safe, insured experience for both parties? So we take a few different approaches here. First, every guest that would ever come to you through LandTrust has accepted our terms of service, which holds harmless landowners for any activities they participate in on that property. Second, well, at the state level, there are about 34 or 35 now ag producing states. And by the way, I think Kansas was the state that invented this, which has agri-team liability limitation just blanketed. So the states want this type of, everything we're talking about here is basically agritourism, because it's happening on agricultural operations. So hunting, fishing, birding, RVs, whatever. If it's happening on a working farm and ranch, it's agritourism. The state wants to incentivize it. They want to bring new dollars into these farm and ranch operations. And so they know liability is one of the biggest hiccups or holdups for these producers. And so as long as there's not, wanton negligence on behalf of the landowner's part, they're essentially blanketing you, protecting you from liability. There are little different nuances again in all these different states, but essentially that's what these 34 states are offering. Now we get it back into LandTrust. So they've already held you harmless. We do ID verification of every guest who signs up. They can never make a booking request through LandTrust unless they've been ID verified. So that is, we use a third-party company to do this. So they're uploading either a driver's license or a passport. They're taking a selfie and whatever the magic they do at that company, make sure they're a real person and who they say they are. To me, and then of course they pay with a credit card upfront. So I think this has been one of the biggest things for landowners. If you look at landowners and hunters historically, door knocking, of course, is still a thing, and it has been a thing for a long time. The issue with door knocking is that person is anonymous. They could be the greatest person in the world, or they could be a dirtbag, and you have no way of knowing, and you have no recourse if something bad happens. And so that anonymity, we strip that away. Nope. It's real identity, and you're paying with a credit card. And I don't know about you, but something about human psychology says when you know who I am and you have my credit card, people just behave differently. If you've ever booked an Airbnb for friends or family, you're like, hey, I'm the one who booked it. Behave, treat this place well.
Oh, people even when they kind of sort of belong and you challenge them and ask them what their name is and then
Yes.
ask to see their identification.
Yep.
That really, you want to put somebody on the back foot, even if they know they're supposed to.
Yeah, they straighten up. Yeah.
What's your name? I want to see your identification.
Yes. Yes.
No, I want to see your identification so I know that you are not lying to me about your name.
That's right.
We're going to talk about what you're doing here.
Yes. So that we handle all that. And by the way, we have people who signed up and then didn't want to do ID verification, didn't want to pay with credit cards. And we said, that's okay. This isn't for you. And so we weed some folks out like that. All right. So now we move into the actual way that, it works. So you create a listing. Our team is very hands-on. We'll come out and we can talk about, Tom, our landowner success manager down there, and our onboarding team here. We're very white glove. We will do it all for you to get you up and running. But once you're up and running and your listing is live on LandTrust, you'll start to receive inquiries. So, hey, let's just say, Brian, you offered upland bird hunting. You'll receive upland bird hunting inquiries. And it'll say, Nic is interested in hunting October 15th to the 20th for $2,000 for him and a couple of friends. You can message back and forth me once I've made that inquiry. You can talk to me on the phone and feel me out. Now, your phone number is not being given out. None of your information is out there. This is all happening through the platform. If you opt to say, hey, I'd like to chat with you first, you can do that. And then you can accept or decline that booking request. There is no instant booking. This is not like a hotel. People aren't just going to come in, book your place and show up. Everything is a request, and then you decide based off your conversations if you want to allow or not allow. So now we'll move into, once the booking happens, you get to rate them and they get to rate you, just like Airbnb or VRBO or Uber, all these other marketplaces you've used.
Well, I might have used them, but there's probably a lot of guys that are
definitely
thinking about this and listen to the podcast. You're like, what the hell are they talking about? So it's a two-way rating system, right?
Correct.
So,
yes.
So the landowners, we get a chance to rate the people that are coming out to do these.
That came out.
Right.
Yes.
And then they in turn get to rate us. And I imagine it's one of those things that if a guest gets too much negative feedback,
they'll never book again. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know many landowners that would have a 3-star rated guest on their property. So again, all these things, transparency and ratings, this is what marketplaces are so good at, is making it efficient and safe and trustworthy to transact versus like a random Craigslist person or someone knocking on your door, again. So and now we get into the, liability stuff. We offer personal injury. So if a guest comes out, even though they've held you harmless and they technically are liable, if they step in a gopher hole, speaking of gophers, and break their leg, and again, from our contracts perspective, they're liable, but if they were to make a mistake, they can come to us and we'll cover up to $10,000 in their medical bills. Then there's property protection. So again, the guest is liable, but if for whatever reason they're making a stink, they break a gate, the fade, shoot a cow. That's a question I've been asked since the beginning of starting this company. It's still never happened, knock on wood. But if they did, we'd write you a check for it. If they didn't, take care of it. Even though, they're liable, they should be the one who's paying for it, but we will write the check if not, because our relationship with our landowners, our business partners is too valuable. And then we have $1 million general liability policy that's a backstop. So it's not first dollar coverage, just last dollar coverage. I've learned a lot about insurance since starting this company. So now we are also partners with the Farm Bureau in Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, Oklahoma, North Dakota. So all the states that we're launching, we are member benefits. And the Farm Bureau often offers what they call like agri-teamment rider. So it's a couple $100 a year and it's first dollar coverage. but I will often come back to asking this question to landowners who are really concerned about the liability aspect. I say, is anyone that's not your family coming out on, have they been out on your place recently for anything? And well, of course, people come out to their place to do all sorts of stuff. Well, they're more exposed doing that than they would be through land trust.
I can see that. It sounds like, there's a couple places where you guys are paying for, double insurance or extra insurance
That's
just
right.
because just because you want to protect the landowner.
Of course. That's right. So it is, and we will look, nothing's perfect. Anyone can sue anything at any time for any reason. So, that's just the reality of the world that we live in, unfortunately. But we have found that, again, we have 1.25 million acres on the platform. A lot of people have said, yes, this is pretty comprehensive, and we'll continue to grow and make our insurance products better and better, and trust and safety and all these things. That's so important to marketplaces. It's in our interest as a business to do these things.
Awesome. So you said you were in 30 plus states. I'm not going to make you list them all, but
I could.
is there a reason, like, are you, is there things that would keep you from expanding to certain states? Or are you looking to serve the whole 50 states or lower 48?
Sure. That's a good question. So no, there's no reason we haven't. Two-sided marketplaces like the one that we're building, where you have to build the supply and the demand and facilitate it, are very difficult businesses to get up. And there's the chicken and the egg problem in the beginning, right? Buyers don't want to be let unless sellers are there, and vice versa. So they're notoriously hard to start, but they're really great businesses once you get them going and the flywheel starts spinning. So really it comes down to just focus and capital and time. So, we are a young company. We have just, raised in the last few years. We just finished our Series A financing. So we've raised just about $9.5, $10 million for the company to date since it was founded in 2019. And, while that sounds like a lot of money to do the things that we're doing, it will take a lot more than that to continue the growth. So no, we will absolutely be in every state. We have aspirations for, other countries and continents. We believe that there is a global market for this, but we're very focused on the US today.
Perfect. So I was thinking about, we were talking about, the communication. So it was, like you said, I have been on the platform for right at a year. I guess it was just right at a year ago when Tom was out and we were
May 10th. Yep, when he went live. Yeah.
wow. Yep, 2 days. You know that's better than I do. Was a you got me mixed.
With Tom. Yep. So Tom came out.
Okay, yeah. So what was we didn't really have a whole lot of inquiries, and we kind of got down into fall, and I think I talked to you about this. We emailed back and forth about it a little bit, or somebody in support. So I had somebody contact me on the platform, and we traded a couple messages back and forth, and then they said, "Well, we want to do this, even though it's against the land trust user license agreement."
Yes, I do remember that.
Contract and maybe contact us off the platform.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my red flag goes up right there. Like, the whole point,
As it should. Yes.
we're doing this transaction through a platform because I don't know you and I don't trust you, and you want me to say, okay, I'll make you a deal outside of the agreement of this platform we're talking, and I'll take our business off this platform.
That's right.
I don't think so. It's my understanding you removed that individual from the platform.
We did.
And I think that's, whether or not, that guy might have been a surgeon with millions of dollars and thousands of friends, but I don't think that's that's why people knocking on doors get told no.
That's right. Yes.
Because people aren't honest and they aren't upfront. And when you're coming at me immediately wanting to change parameters and say, well, we're not going to abide by this license or this user agreement because we want to do this. No.
Yeah. That was an itch. I ended up calling him. He was a lawyer, and he could be a nice guy. It was a very lawyerly approach. And, And hey, we are very hands on. Again, I'm your business partner. These are people that we're bringing, so I directly became involved in that. Our customer service talked to you, and Tom talked to you, our landowner success manager. So I spoke to him, and we see this very rarely. I can think again, kind of like you with the foxes. On two hands, I can probably remember the times that this has happened. And then we banned that person from the platform because they wanted to not abide by the rules of the platform and they wanted to take things offline. So we keep a very close eye on that. It happens very rarely, but when it does, again, you didn't get to just book your place and show up. It was a request, and we handled that.
So just just after that, I ended up booking with another gentleman that came down. And, like, it was his first experience booking with LandTrust. It was obviously
Mhm.
my first experience, so it was kind of a learning thing. It wasn't. I'm not going to say that Tom gave me this impression, but I thought I was going to be more of a kind of a hands off type situation, which I
Yep.
suppose with some more communication from me before this group showed up, it could have been. But I didn't. I ended up spending a few hours with them, several phone calls, but go
Right.
over here, go over here in the morning, try for some birds over here in the morning. If you don't get them over there, go to this other spot.
Sure.
Um, but overall, I mean, it was a good transaction. There were good guys. They're going to come back. We already talked about them coming back for a little
Awesome.
bit longer next year, doing some more hunting. Um, yeah, the first spot they went and walked with their dogs. They didn't hardly see any birds. And then they got in touch with me, and I moved them over to another part of the ranch, and like I think they tagged out within 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Tom had said your place is a beautiful, beautiful place for upland birds. Um, yeah, and it's good. Look, we are working every day to make this product and service for our landowner partners as easy as possible to use. We are not where, as the founder, I'm our product's harshest critic. I can see in my mind's eye what it should be. And of course it takes time to build to these things. So we take feedback from our landowners constantly, like, hey, how can we make this easier and better for you? Um, One of the things that we do now with the onboarding process is, and I think Tom did this for you, and we keep mentioning Tom. Tom is our landowner success manager in Kansas. So he actually goes out and visits every single landowner we have. He'll take photos of your property. He'll build digital maps of your property, and then arrival instructions. So all the stuff that you would tell, without land trust, if you said, yeah, you can come out, and like the conversation you have with them, hey, you're going to want to get here like this. You're going to go 2 miles past the sign and make a left, whatever. And then the instructions you'd give to them if they came out to go bird hunting on your place. We try to capture all that at the beginning now with our onboarding so that it is, once you accept somebody's booking, they get basically this packet via an email that has the digital maps of your property with waypoints where, hey, you can park here. This is a no-go zone. There's deer stands here, here, and here. Here's a trail, whatever. All those things that you would mark off on a paper map for somebody if they came out to your place. We now do that digitally because most, hunters and most people who do other outdoor recreation use digital maps at this point. And then the arrival instructions. And we're going to continue to improve those things because we really did build LandTrust for a complete do-it-yourself experience. So some of our landowners who earned the most money on LandTrust over the last few years have met very few of their guests because they're busy. They're producers, right? They're growers and they've got other stuff going on. So we want to build and design our product and service for no touch, hands off. And then we do see a lot of producers who do like to actually, show people around or, whatever they might want to do there.
okay. I was listening to you talk, and you talked about the booking packet, and like we said, it has been a year since I was on board on the platform, and I had a couple
Yep.
bookings last fall, and it hasn't been terribly active for me.
Sure.
Probably a lot of that's my fault because I don't promote it.
Yep.
I'm the second worst person on planet Earth about self promotion, and anybody that's listened to the podcast or followed my social media for more than a couple of months probably knows that. So, um, how do I how would I how do I do the QA on the booking packet that you send out? Like, to make sure
Sure.
that it's So I'm familiar with what you're sending them and
Yep.
excuse me, little frog in my throat. So how do I QA the booking packet? How do I know what you're sending them? So I'm familiar with where you, where the land trust system is going to be of how they have the experience set up. You get what I'm trying to ask, right?
Are you asking about the marketability or like when the on-site once people show up?
I'm asking about like so after we get through all the communication
Yeah.
and we
And they make a
and
booking. Yeah.
yeah, and like you book with me, okay?
Yep.
So the system sends you the quote booking packet that we just kind of talked about, with the
Right.
instructions.
Yep.
How do I, as a landowner, is there a way for me to be able to look at that booking packet to do quality assurance on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I guess we should probably explain our landowner success team real quick because I think this is the key to it. So look, we understand that this could seem daunting to get started. And again, we're talking to owner operators, so very busy people. In light of that, we want to do as much of it as we can for them. So if it's interesting to you, we'll have a landowner success manager come out and visit, like real person who works for us. We usually hire them from those communities, uh, and they'll bring you up to speed. They'll talk to you about it. They'll answer questions, etc. But those landowner success managers, their job title is very descriptive. It is their job to make sure that you are successful because that is how we make money. You don't make money unless you're not, unless you're successful. So in the scenario like this, where you said, hey, we had our first guest come out, I actually like to have people park here and I probably want to add some instructions about this. And if they're coming out to bird hunt, here's roughly what I would tell folks to do. That is something that you could easily, just text or call your landowner success manager or someone here at customer service or landowner onboarding. And we will add all those things to your listing. So that the next booking that comes through, all those updates are pushed out. So if you have something like, oh, I wish you should change something here, add something, after a booking, you can text us, you can call us, and we'll add those things into your listing.
Okay. So without telling me who they are, can you
Sure.
like give me an idea of what some of the income potential is, like say
Sure.
for top 5 properties?
Sure. We have landers who've made $30,000 to $50,000 with us. Uh, so and this is when I talk to investors, I have to paint the 5-year, 10-year horizon for the business. That's just with hunting as one activity. So as you know, and as your audience probably knows, hunting is a state regulated activity that has certain dates that you can actually hunt. So we have actual hard windows where you can monetize access to your land to go hunting. Well, as a marketplace operator and a business partner of yours, I want to give you the opportunity to make money year round, of course. So as we get into these other activities like fishing or, bird watching, by the way, bird watching is a 40 billion with a B dollar industry in the US a year. It's way bigger than hunting. But fishing, bird watching, farm and range experiences, like we've spoken about earlier, RVs, these now are unbound by the state regulated seasons. And now you can choose to monetize, and offer packages year round through LandTrust. So hunting is definitely a solid revenue driver. Again, we're on average $3, $5, $7, $10,000 a year. Obviously, it depends on the property and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying universally that's the earning income potential, but it is a high revenue driving activity. But we are going to be bringing other activities onto the platform and driving demand for those things so that you can generate income from LandTrust year round. So I expect to see our really well performing landowners doing $100,000 plus lifetime.
Awesome. Hopefully I can start working towards that level from where I'm at real soon.
So you have a phenomenal property and, we've looked at it, Tom and I have talked about it a lot and it's our job to go match demand to your supply. That's our job. So, we've been evaluating a few of these places and like, hey, this is an incredible property. What's up here? Basically like QAing that, like, why is Alexander not booking a lot more? Because we know what the property is and what it has to offer. So that's our job to go figure out. It's not your job. Our job, that's our part of the partnership.
I get it. I get it.
Now, I will say that the one thing we ask of our landowners is that they're responsive. And I know in the beginning you were super busy. I forget what time of year it was, roughly around this time of year. And I don't know if it was, planting or whatever was going on. You're very busy, which totally understand. So the one thing we do ask, and you've gotten super good at this now, but like being responsive, because people make inquiries and they die on the vine essentially if they don't get responded to in a certain amount of time.
Or I would respond almost immediately.
Yes.
I would get an inquiry about a thing, like so-and-so inquired about blah, blah, blah experience for such and such date for, like, okay, great, cool. I respond and they ask a question, I respond, or, they've just made the inquiry. So I say, well, okay, how many people?
Yeah.
And I never get a response. Like, okay, so that person ghosted me. And then, I just had a situation, like it's actually kind of just went on over the last few days. So I had uh, somebody message me Saturday morning. Right. And I saw it. I'm like, okay, I'm out feeding cows.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm on my phone. I guess this would be my biggest criticism of the Land Trust platform right now.
For sure. Yeah.
In order to respond, I have to go to the website.
Yep.
And that's not the most streamlined process.
You're totally right.
On a phone.
Yes. You're totally right.
So a lot of times, like if I see that inquiry, like, okay, that's an email thing that gets to wait until I get back to the office.
Yep.
So it did. And I get back to the office and it's this guy asking about fishing. I'm like, and I look at the date and I'm like,
today.
That's today.
Yeah.
I messaged him back real quick and I'm like, I don't accept same day. I don't accept same day bookings. He goes, no, this is for tomorrow. I'm like, well, the date says for today. And I ended up,
shows the wrong date. Yeah.
I ended up like letting that one go. It was just, it just didn't really feel right about it. Like plan ahead a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
No, if you want to book same day, come knock on the door.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes. And and I said earlier, as the founder, I'm our product's harshest critic. This has been making it as easy as possible for a landowner to respond and engage is what we're working towards. Obviously a mobile app where you got a push notification and you can tap it and respond. That would probably be pretty good, where you're not having to like click a link and log in and whatnot. We're also working on the potential for you just to be able to respond via the text message you get the notification from.
That's what I was going to say. Like when the system says, hey, you got a message from this guy, instead of saying that, just saying,
yes,
the message from this guy, you can text here to respond or click this link to respond on the website.
So text messaging, we've really found that our farmers and ranchers like text the best. So it is literally in our development queues. This is confirming, by the way, everyone is listening to live customer research, part of the research, but we're going to probably, instead of going the mobile app direction immediately, of course, we'll have a full mobile app at a future date. But we know that our landowners prefer text over every other basically type of communication, over email, over phone calls. Generally speaking, for these kind of transactional things, we're always here with phone call away, but you can deal with it at your time. You don't need a lot of cell service where you would with an app. Like you can fire up a text message with very little cell service. Whereas if you're trying to load an app, you're like, well, what's happening out here?
Ignoring a text message from somebody I don't know stresses me out so much with ignoring a phone call from a number I don't recognize.
For sure. Yeah. So you do like a text message. You would be like, hey, if I could just respond via text or accept a booking or decline a booking via text, that would be thumbs up from you.
Yeah, that would definitely be a good feature. And apps are great. Everybody loves apps. The problem is you have to build an app for iPhone, and then you have to build an app for Android. You have to make them both work with a unified database on the back end.
Yes.
And then every feature you want to put on that app costs a big pile of money.
That's right.
And I don't know how much it's affected you, but a year ago, money was still free, and now it's an investment. And it,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
like, well, changes on social media. I've been talking about this for a while, and it was back in January when I really started to notice it. Probably around the end of January, I all my social media feeds, especially Facebook. Facebook got horrible. It went from
Yep.
seeing a lot of content you want to now it's 2/3 of your Facebook feed is all sponsored content.
Ads.
It's all ads, and, what Elon Musk has done over at Twitter, you know,
Yeah.
they had to cut a lot of staff that weren't doing anything, and they've had to find ways to make money. People are like, "Oh, I'm not paying $8 for a check mark." Well, you might not want to, but I will, because
Yeah, but someone will. Yeah.
$8 a month for credibility, that check mark on Twitter
That's right.
actually really increased my reach. If you're
Yeah.
some famous person that's bitching now that you have to pay $8 for your check mark, shut up. You just made $1,000,000 in a movie, right? I don't want to.
Yeah, totally.
So what I'm saying is, a lot of revenue models changed, and that probably isn't affecting you and your business like it is affecting some of these other businesses that are cash heavy and not very cash flowy.
Well, and this is the world I used to work in. So I worked in digital advertising and social advertising for a decade, and really early on in the YouTube days and Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. Consequently, it's why I don't personally have social media anymore. The company does, of course, but I haven't had social media personally since 2015, I think. So I'm a real person. Some people get weirded out when people don't have social media. I have LinkedIn, which I don't know. That's a bit, I don't really look at that as social media. I mean, I know technically it kind of is, but
I feel like LinkedIn isn't as well defined as the other networks. I mean, as TikTok and Instagram and
right.
Facebook, as far as what kind of voice people are talking in and how the interactions are. I think that there's still a lot of folks trying to figure out what's
Yeah.
okay and what's not okay on LinkedIn, and figure out what works well on that platform and what doesn't.
I use it just as a business connection. I've raised a lot of money. I've sold a lot of deals. I've connected with a lot of partners for the business. I don't really produce content, quote, on LinkedIn. But, I think these platforms versus something like LandTrust or a marketplace platform, those platforms, Instagram and Twitter and these things, they make money from ad revenue, generally speaking. Now, as you mentioned, Elon is switching that and trying to have some other subscription models. But any business where you're the user, you're the product, they have to make money off of you. Whereas a marketplace like ours, no, there's a clear value exchange and there's a dollar associated with it. So we're not stressing out like, hey, it's $400 to come out and have birds for a couple of days with your buddy at Alexander Ranch or whatever the price is. And that's a very clear value exchange. Thankfully we're not in that ad supported business where, they're trying to figure out ways to generate income because, it's been a huge shift in the last 2 years.
Well, it could segue into the revenue share model. So
Sure.
there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Nope.
I want to throw out what that's a reference to, but I think it's so obscure nobody will get it. Robert Heinlein's "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress." There ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
No, it's obscure for me.
All right, I knew it would be a little bit of obscure. So how do you fund operations at LandTrust?
Sure. So we'll talk about the business model between our landowners and us, and just how does LandTrust generate revenue? So we facilitate the marketplace. We're a market maker. A booking comes through. Let's just use really round numbers, easy numbers. So let's just say it's $1,000 booking. You offer a deer hunt on your property in the fall, and it's $1,000 for 3 days for 2 guys to come out. Super easy numbers, right? So that package will be on your listing, and someone who wants to do that package will book it. And so when they make that booking, we charge a booking fee to the guest. So that helps us pay for insurance and operations and credit card processing and all that stuff, right?
Is that a set amount?
It's a percentage. So it's 15% as a booking fee to the guest. So the booking will actually be $1,150 instead of $1,000. And then we charge a 15% commission to the landowner. So you keep 85% of it, keep 15% of it. We do have partnerships with like the Farm Bureau. So in the states that we're Farm Bureau member benefits, it's actually a 90-10 split. So you get 5% more of the earnings than just our standard rates. So that's how LandTrust in most marketplaces generate, revenue and income is through, booking fees and commissions. And then, how we fund our operations, we are a venture capital funded company. As I mentioned, since 2019, we've raised, roughly $9 million to grow the business. With these companies, they take money, capital investment up front to get started, but then they can become very profitable, but it takes time to get to that place.
Okay. So let me see if I've captured this correctly. So let's say I'm selling a deer hunt for $1,000.
Yep.
Okay. Bob comes in and books that.
Yes.
He's going to end up paying $1,150.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm going to get $850 and LandTrust gets
Yep.
the rest.
Yeah. We get that spread in between. That's correct.
Okay. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. It helps us pay for acquiring Bob. Like, how did Bob hear about us? Probably through advertising. So we have to spend money to acquire Bob. I mean, our credit card processing fees are 3%. So that comes out of our take too. Insurance, keeping the lights on, paying customer success, landowner success, all that stuff.
You got to pay for Tom's coffee and donut habit.
We do have to pay for that.
Yep. Cause he does like his coffee and donuts in the morning.
Yep.
So what are some things that you won't do? What are some activities that you won't touch?
So generally speaking, everything that we do has to be symbiotic with, let's call it rural undeveloped lands, production agriculture. So, there's the recreation business, what we've talked about. I think, Brian, you might have spoken to our COO. We're actually working on some regen and some programs that touch that because we have a big landowner footprint now. And it helps make more money. So LandTrust really is just about generating more income for the farm and ranch. Today we do it through recreation, but we may do it through some other opportunities too. We're not going to ever do anything that does not fit in well with an agricultural operation or lifestyle. So, we would never come to you and say, hey, there's this opportunity to put, 2,000 acres of solar panels on your place. Like, because once you do that, there's just not really an opportunity to do some of these other things. If it doesn't jive with a farm, ranch, daily operations, we probably won't talk about it with you. We want to be creative. And we want to bring you, like I said, farm and ranch experiences. Hey, what do you do on a daily basis? Like maybe people following you around doing your chores is interesting and people will pay you to do that. You can always say no to anything that we bring to you. But yeah, I don't know. We just wouldn't do anything that doesn't fit in well with not just an operation, but also like the lifestyle of a farm or ranch.
Okay.
We wouldn't allow like a PETA conference, stuff like that. In all seriousness, we wouldn't allow any sort of activism or, something like that to ever be, to happen on our platform. We actually have stuff in our terms of service that says, nothing, from a booked experience can ever be used for anything like that.
Well, I don't know. A PETA conference might be kind of fun. Depending on how many people showed up and how far back in the anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
We had something else written down here. Where we go?
I know I got to scribble notes too, or I forget.
One of the hardest things for me has always been knowing what to charge somebody when they want to come hunt deer, when they want to come fish, or when they want to come, run their dogs and look at birds. It's knowing what to charge. And I totally get not every ranch is created equally, right?
Right.
I mostly have ridge tops and some steep hills. I don't have a lot of big flat bottom ground. Got a couple of decent creeks. I don't have any rivers. There's not a bunch of wheat fields or food plots or alfalfa fields on the ranch. So just a few miles away down the river bottom, there is. There's areas. So, the perceived value is higher. So like there's a lot of guys down on the river that I feel have, well, I open the door, so I'll say it, that maybe have like inferior deer, or they have lower quality deer than I have out on my place.
Sure.
Maybe they're a little bit thicker, but it's a little harder for me to sell because you get these deer hunters from back east that think that, deer need trees, and they come out to
Right.
and you're like, well, you don't have any trees.
Yeah.
You don't have any trees. Where are your deer? And
Yeah. You see that little shelter belt?
yeah, you tell somebody, hey, you see those trees up there? Yeah, those are the trees. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to, I don't know what it is. It's like people watch these deer shows on, the Outdoor Channel or whatever, and they just listen to guys and they don't open their eyes. When I've got grass that's 3 feet tall through the deer hunting season,
Right.
and the deer have evolved to be the exact color of that grass, you can't see them when they're laying down in it.
No.
I mean, they're literally invisible.
Yes.
But those same brown deer, when they're walking in front of a green cedar tree, you can see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with my friend Greg. I've been cutting and burning cedar trees for literally 35 years.
The bane of your existence.
Not quite, but they're close.
Yeah.
And I could count on one hand and have 4 fingers left over the amount of times I've ever seen a deer underneath a cedar tree. The one time I've ever seen a deer under a cedar tree, it was a very young doe deer. She was curled up underneath a cedar tree in a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Which, that's not a bad place to be in a thunderstorm.
Totally.
But that's literally the only time I've ever seen any evidence of a deer laying down under a cedar tree. Now, I've run over several deer out in the pasture in my side by side. Like that's happened
Bedded down. Yeah.
That's happened at least 3 times. So the argument that cedar trees are good for deer, or that cedar trees make good deer habitat, I see absolutely no evidence to support that. But that's a lot of the attitude that I've gotten over the years. Is, oh, you don't have any trees. You don't have any.
You don't have any timber. Yeah.
You don't have any timber. Like, well, there's an oak tree right there. There's a walnut tree right there. Would you rather it be an open area full of grass in between, or full of elm trees that nothing eats?
Right. And it has no understory, has no food below them. Yeah,
Right.
Totally.
So,
I think you got to, and this is all feeding from the pricing conversation, right?
yes.
So luckily I scribbled notes because I lose track too. It's a really good question. So first we want to acknowledge that one, we are kind of market making. So yes, from a hunting perspective, annual leases have existed for a long time and it's fairly understood, but we're talking about as little as a day. So I could book your place for a 3 or whatever you want to offer, but I could book your place for a 3-day deer hunt. This is a new market that we're actually putting in, onto a platform. So the real answer is we don't know yet truly what the pricing should be. Now we are starting to learn more. We have a data scientist here. We watch a lot of bookings go through the platform. And as we get more and more, we'll be able to give you true market pricing. That is a little ways off. So today, we're totally honest when we onboard. Pricing is much more art than science. And what I will say is to the landowner, price it in a way that will make it worth it to you. So, we have a minimum. So landowners can say, hey, listen, I don't want to do anything daily. I want to do a minimum of a week. I want to make at least, $5,000 for a handful of guys to come out and hunt deer per week. That's what makes it worth it to me, regardless of whatever the market price may be. So it's more art than science today. Price it in a way that is worth it to you. And look, if you price it at $1 million for a week, probably no one's going to book it, So that's up to you. We'll always come back to you and have suggestions based off what we see across the market and what that specific property. This is one of the big things landowner success managers do. They go get boots on the ground and they look at these places. And so it's like, hey, it's not about acreage per se. It's about, from a hunting perspective, food, water, and shelter. And, That's what hunters look at when they see properties. And guess what? 3 foot tall grass is kind of shelter. So, uh, it, so we will help you. You always choose. It's your place. It's what you're offering. You choose the prices, but we can help and make some pretty educated guesses off of what we're seeing the market around you do.
I remember from when Tom was out here a year ago, he had a good idea of what he was looking at and what would be valuable and what wouldn't be. I
Hmm.
and I can imagine he's only gotten better over the last year.
For sure. Cause Tom was real new. I mean, it's funny. Colton was my first employee here at LandTrust, and I found him right out of college. And Tom is Colton's dad. So Tom now, he retired from a career in flooring and now does this job. I think it's like his passion project. But yeah, he has gotten a lot better. He's put on a ton of ground, visited with a ton of folks in Kansas. That's his market. And now he's starting to dip into Missouri. And then listen, as we develop new types of demand, like, hey, stargazing or bird watching or farm and ranch experiences, it's his job to go and say, hey, Brian, we got these new things. Are any of them interesting? And you can say yes or no. So that's our job, to constantly bring you opportunities that you can say yes or no to.
Cool. Cool. Okay. So if somebody wants to get started with land trust, where do they go and what's the process like?
Yeah, good question. So obviously our website is a good place to go. That's just landtrust.com. There's a landowner section. So I'm looking at it right now. So if you go to landtrust.com and along the top bar, there's a green for landowners button. And that has a lot of the information we've talked about here. There's some videos, there's some testimonials. It just covers a bunch of what we're doing. Actually refreshing this page currently. So the next couple of weeks, this will look a little different, and I'll have some more. We have a lot of landowner testimonial videos of folks who've been with us for years now. So that's a really great place to start. From there, you could just call us or text us. So that number would be 406-709-8450. Real life human beings are here on the other end of the line. If you prefer texting, you can shoot us a text. Definitely tell us that you heard about it, that you heard about us through this podcast. We love hearing where we're hearing from folks. And text, phone call. You can, give us your email. We'll reach out to you whenever it works for you. So we're extremely service oriented. Hopefully, Brian, you felt that. Like, we are hands on. This is not some big Silicon Valley tech company that there's no human beings on the other side. We're very service oriented with our approach.
I think the way Tom sold it to me was, we're just a small startup company of guys that like to hunt out of Montana.
Yep. And we love our farmers and ranchers. Honestly, I started it because I wanted to use the product, but over the last few years, I've really developed my passion for the landowner side of the business. Of course, I love the other side too, and I use it all the time. But to me, being able to partner with the people who grow our food, fuel, and fiber and drive incremental profitability, and also through doing that, introduce people to farmers and ranchers and seeing their operations. And when you read our reviews on our platform, we watch them all come through. I mean, you see paragraphs, and even though, it was booked for hunting, they talk about the family, the property, the history, how cool it was to actually see all that stuff. And like, oh yeah, and we shot a white-tailed deer or whatever. It's very much an experience. And I really want to be clear here. If I don't want landowners to think, oh, I don't have 200-inch white-tailed deer, so this is probably not for me. We tell swordsmen, if you need to go kill a 200-inch deer, you should hire an outfitter, and you should go do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Land trust is about outdoor experiences. So, I just went to Missouri to a couple of our farms down there, and I got to spend time with some friends and some partners. We got to grill, we got to sleep on the farm in an RV. We got to fish. We were turkey hunting. I actually shot my first turkey, which is exciting. But it's about going to a new place with some friends or family, to have new experiences and create memories. That's what it's about. It's about experiences, not about outcomes. We do have people come to us. They're very trophy driven, and we guide them elsewhere, because It's just not what we're here for. Now, don't get me wrong. We absolutely have properties on land trust where that stuff can happen, but the motivation is different.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Was there anything that I've forgotten to ask you today?
Oh, we have covered a lot here.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
Yeah, I would be curious how you see recreation playing into your, I mean, as a regenerative, I mean, would you call yourself a regenerative rancher? I know it's kind of a buzzy term now.
I mean, I guess I kind of have to, until
Yeah.
figure out another term that we could use until, somebody else steals it. Uh,
A holistic land manager.
I think we've already well, maybe we'll have to bring that one back. There's just probably a few of them we'll have to have in a rotation. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, I, and really I could go either way on, the outreach and the tours and telling people what I'm doing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, some days it's like, yeah, if somebody showed up in the driveway, I could spend all day talking to them. And then there's just days where it's like, I don't want to see anybody. So I have a lot of things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's very important to connect consumers back with their food.
That's
Uh,
right.
so I'm in my mid 40s. You're probably pretty fairly close to there, I'm guessing.
Mid 30s. I turned 35 this year. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm getting old. Um,
Feel the same way.
look, wait a few years. That was I believe it was. Oh, let's just say it was like back in the 90s. There was a sign on the interstate in Kansas, and I remember seeing that sign. It says one Kansas farmer feeds 76 people, and then it was 114, and then it was 140,
Wow.
and now it's like 160. And that really speaks to the disconnection that
Mm,
people have, not just with their food, but to land.
absolutely.
Um, so it was like when I was in school in the mid 80s, it was mid 80s and 90s. I think it was like 1 in 6 still had a family member that was directly connected to farming ranch, whether it was an uncle or
Yes.
grandpa. It was like 1 in 6, and now it's like 1 in 20.
Yeah.
It's so much worse now after just 2 or 3 decades, like the disconnection and bringing people back, getting people back out on the land that maybe have lost the connection not just to their food but to nature. In
That's right.
fact, last episode that should have come out before this one um, was with a friend. We talked about he was a Marine,
Mm,
and he talked about some of his issues with PTSD,
hmm.
and that livestock have really helped him heal. And um, I probably didn't back him up enough in that episode and that content, but I can 100% say that being around livestock definitely has a calming, has a healing effect on on my stress, on my post traumatic stress.
Sure.
And I think about how many combat veterans there are, and how many just guys that served for 40 years and never heard one go off in anger, but still had to deal with some stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably a lot of people that don't have the connection to nature, don't have the connection to the land. There's
Or the people who steward the land.
well, and people like, oh, well, I got to go get grounded. I need to go take off my shoes and walk around for a while outside. Like, that's just the weirdest shit I've ever heard. Like, you have to go do that you have to, it takes effort to go do that. Like, that's just something I
Yeah.
do whenever I want.
Yeah.
Living there in Bozeman, me living in Sun City, like it's hard for us to have a concept of what it's like for the person that's listening to this living in the filing cabinet in Southern California or
Yes.
Chicago or Kansas City or
Yeah.
Boston or New York. Your life is in a building, as in 1,000 square foot space that you have in a building, and you can go and you can do everything you need to do in life and never have to touch dirt. This seems like a pretty clean lifestyle,
Crazy.
but it's really
It's
like
crazy.
the other way. It's
Yes. And I lived that way for about a decade in my 20s. I lived on, in airplanes and cities and hotels. And that's where I grew up outdoors with my feet in the sand or the dirt, so to speak. And that's why I live where I live now. And I'm building this business that I'm building because it really does facilitate more people to be able to do that thing. And on ground that is stewarded by people that have been doing it for generations. You want to talk about sustainability, that buzzy buzzword that, a lot of people who never had their, feet in the dirt, so to speak. Oh, a family being on a place for 6 generations, which I think is our oldest current landowner, is about 6 generations. It seems pretty sustainable. We've had the Audubon Society go out there and say, we've seen more of this species of bird than we've seen on quote protected areas. And it's a cattle rancher who doesn't even know what the bird is. So, I think from a high level, we're working on our new, I'm curious to get your perspective too, but we're working on our new kind of updated mission statement. And where I've landed is, LandTrust exists to enable the enjoyment, profitability, and sustainability of America's undeveloped private lands. And that's really, I think it distills what we are aiming to do. And, we care a lot about that mission. I love to hunt and fish and do all those outdoor stuff, but frankly, those are hobbies. What I'm deeply passionate about and care a lot about is making sure that working in undeveloped lands stay that way. And they don't, shoot, I live in what was a wheat field on Google Maps until last year, And so, hey, once it gets developed, it's never going back. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a subdivision turned back into undeveloped land.
I haven't seen that either. We see that, but I can also see there's not a lot. There are small towns, small communities across the Western Plains
Sure.
between Interstate 35 and the Front Range.
Yeah.
Like there's just huge strip in there that people have moved out of. And I see it more in Eastern Colorado where you can see where the town border is and you can see where it was and where there used to be houses. So to say that, we haven't seen subdivisions razed to the ground and go back in and farm that land, just because we haven't seen it and it's not any part of the paradigm that we've experienced the last 50 years, doesn't mean it didn't happen in a lot of communities up and down the plains, in the 1930s and the 1950s.
For sure.
So
yeah, it's definitely not something we see today. It would be interesting, actually. It'd be an interesting project for someone to work on. Obviously, I can't pick on anything else, but to identify these opportunities like, hey, you know what? That Dollar General just didn't work out. What if we turn it back into some pasture or some crop or something?
Oh man, that's a can of worms. That'd be an interesting business model of figuring out.
I don't know how you make money from it, but it would be a societal good, I think.
Well, no, okay, I get it, but just figuring out a plan, just having a plan to convert all the Dollar Generals and all the family farms to something else.
They pop up everywhere. There's a lot of memes about it. It's pretty crazy where those things end up.
Oh man, like 3 weeks ago, we took a little trip down to the southeast Oklahoma and then up through western Arkansas to northwest Arkansas. And we stayed off the interstate. We didn't even go. We didn't even go more than 10 miles down the interstate. Stayed completely off of it, just because I'm starting to really enjoy back roads. I'm starting to really enjoy back roads at 45 and just being able to see scenery and
cruise.
It started to be a joke. Like if we'd go more than about 5 or 7 miles without seeing a Dollar General, we start looking and sure enough, like you pop around a corner, come over a hill and like an intersection.
There it is
in nowhere northwest Arkansas, just a crossroads without even a frickin' stop sign. And somebody's building a Dollar General there.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
So, Kansas, last Kansas question for you. Do you say the Arkansas River?
Yeah, it's Arkansas River. but
Right. That's what I,
don't say that because they'll throw things at you.
that's what I figured. Yeah. I had to learn that as my brother-in-law was driving me around because he lives down there by it.
Yep, it's the Arkansas River.
So for everyone visiting Kansas, the Arkansas, not the Arkansas River.
Yeah, if you say the Arkansas River, people would just they'll ignore you. They won't even you'll just get ignored. Nobody will even know what you're talking about if you say Arkansas River.
Yeah. You've identified yourself.
Yep. Yep. You've outed yourself at that point. So be prepared. There might be guns and knives coming out. Well, Nick, I got to get going. It's been awesome this morning. If I haven't,
I really appreciate you having me on.
All right. So landtrust.com, got your phone number. We'll make sure that gets in the show notes. Anywhere else we want to send traffic?
I think that's the main spot. I mean, we have some social media pages that you can go to, and LandTrust. I think what Instagram is like Hunt. It's our Hunt oriented LandTrust page, but it has, I don't know, we're up to maybe 10,000 followers there now. But the website for Landowners, for all intents and purposes, everything you need is there. You can talk to us, you can text us, however you like to communicate. We'd love to communicate with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been great conversation today, Nick. I really appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it. Yeah, vice versa.
And I guess we'll go ahead and sign off. And gang, have a great week.